Welcome back to the channel where we uncover the most calculated betrayals, and trust me, today's story is going to make your blood boil. We are looking at the exact moment everything shattered for Thomas, and it all started with a single desk drawer that wasn't quite closed. The tension had been quietly building beneath the surface for weeks, hidden behind polite smiles and carefully rehearsed lies. But the truth has a way of surfacing when least expected, and when it does, it rarely comes quietly. It is that classic heavy feeling of being in a room where the air is stagnant, like a storm is brewing just out of sight and you are simply waiting for the first crack of lightning to strike. That truth came crashing down the moment Thomas stepped into the office and realized something wasn't right. It wasn't a loud alarm or a broken window, but something much more sinister. The subtle shift of a professional space turned into a crime scene of the heart. Thomas discovered a hidden folder that contained the blueprint of a massive betrayal by Hayley and Lynette, two women he considered his closest allies in the world. Instead of loyalty he expected, he found a calculated scheme of financial manipulation and signatures he never authorized. This isn't just a disagreement, it's a full scale ambush of his life's work. The way the labels of friend and partner were weaponized against him is honestly enough to make anyone sick. At first, it was just a feeling, an unease he couldn't quite explain, like a shadow following him through the hallway that he couldn't quite see or touch. Papers were slightly out of place on his desk, a drawer left just barely open. The kind of detail most people would overlook in the rush of a busy morning. But Thomas wasn't most people. He was the kind of man who noticed the way the dust settled on a shelf and the way a chair was moved even an inch to the left. He had learned the hard way that the smallest inconsistencies often hid the biggest secrets. He stood there in the center of the room, listening to the hum of the air conditioner, feeling like he was there in the center of the room, suddenly a stranger in his own sanctuary. He closed the door slowly behind him, the click of the lock sounding unusually light in the heavy silence. His eyes scanning the room with growing suspicion. Everything looked normal at a glance. The coffee mug sat in its usual spot, the pens were lined up, but the more he looked, the more the pieces stopped fitting together. It was like a puzzle where someone had forced the wrong pieces into place to hide the real picture. His instincts kicked in, sharp and unrelenting, urging him to dig deeper, even though a part of him was terrified of what he might find. It is that gut wrenching moment where you want to know the truth, but you are also praying you are just being paranoid. And when Thomas followed that instinct, when he opened that drawer fully and found what had been hidden inside, everything changed. It was a heavy, manila folder buried under a stack of old magazines, and the moment his fingers touched the cold paper, he knew it shouldn't be there. The folder he pulled out wasn't supposed to exit. Not here, not in this office, not in the world he thought he lived in. His name was on it, printed in a cold professional font along with several others, and as he flipped through the pages, his expression darkened with every line he read. It was a goldmine of deception. He saw financial records that showed money moving through accounts he didn't recognize. He saw signed documents where his own signature looked back at him, perfectly forged and utterly damning. Dates that didn't make sense showed meetings he never attended and decisions he never made. And then names. Haley, Lynette, seeing their names written alongside those numbers was like a physical punch to the gut. At first, he didn't want to believe it. He couldn't. Haley and Lynette had always presented themselves as allies. People he could trust, people who stood on the same side of every battle they have ever fought. He thought about the holidays they spent together and the long nights in this very office dreaming of the future, but the evidence in his hands told a completely different story, one of deception, manipulation, and a scheme that ran deeper than he ever imagined. No, Thomas muttered under his breath, shaking his head as if that alone could change What he was seeing is the desperate moment where you hope your eyes are playing tricks on you, but the ink is dry and the numbers are real. This was deliberate, calculated, and worst of all, it had been happening right under his nose while he was busy trusting them. As the realization set in, anger began to replace the shock, a slow burning heat that started in his chest and radiated outward. His grip tightened on the folder, the paper clinking under the pressure of his shaking hands. How long had they been playing him? How many times had they stood in front of him, smiling and pretending while secretly working against him? The betrayal cut deeper than he expected, not just because of what they had done, but because of who they were. Thomas paced the room, his mind racing as he tried to piece everything together. His overheard and unexplained decisions that had cost them clients now clicked into place with brutal clarity. It had all been part of their plan. And then came the worst part, the realization of what their scheme actually meant for his legacy. This wasn't just about money. This was about control. They weren't just betraying him, they were setting him up to take the fall for their crimes. That's why Thomas whispered, his eyes widening as another piece of the puzzle fell into place. The recent accusations from the board and the sudden scrutiny of his accounts weren't random bad luck. It was orchestrated, and Haley and Lynette were behind it all. A sharp knock on the door pulled him out of his thoughts. Thomas quickly shoved the folder back into the drawer. Though his mind was already made up, come in, he called, his voice steadier than he felt. The door opened, and there she was, Haley, calm, composed, completely unaware that everything had just unraveled for her. He, she said casually, stepping inside. I was looking for you. We need to talk about. About what? Thomas cut in, his tone colder than she had ever heard before. Haley paused, clearly caught off guard about the situation. She said carefully, things are getting complicated, and we need to make sure we are on the same page. Thomas let out a short, humorless laugh. The same page, he repeated. That's interesting. Coming from you. Haley's expression shifted, a flicker of concern crossing her face. What's that supposed to mean? Before Thomas could respond, another voice joined them. It means you should choose your next words very carefully. Lynette stepped into the room, her presence immediately raising the stakes. She glanced between them, her sharp eyes picking up on the tension instantly. What's going on here? She asked, though there was a hint of defensiveness in her tone. Thomas looked at both of them. The two women, who had just hours ago been people he trusted, and now stood before him as something entirely different. I think you already know, he said slowly. The question is, how long were you planning to keep lying to me? Haley and Lynette exchanged a quick glance, silent but loaded with meaning. Thomas. Haley began, her voice softening. If this is about something you think you saw. Oh, I didn't just see it. Thomas snapped, cutting her off. I read it. Every last detail. He moved toward the desk, pulling the folder back out and tossing it onto the surface between them. The sound echoed like a gunshot. For a moment that neither woman spoke, their eyes locked onto the folder, and in that silence Thomas got the confirmation he needed. They knew. They had always known. It's not what you think, Lynette said finally, her voice measured but tense. Then explain it to me. Thomas shot back. Explain how my name ended up on documents I never signed. Explain the transaction because from where I'm standing, it looks like you have both been running a scheme behind my back. Haley stepped forward, her composure starting to crack. We were trying to protect you, she said quickly. Thomas stared at her, disbelief written all over his face. Protect me? He repeated. By setting me up, by putting everything I have built at risk? It wasn't supposed to go this far. Lynette added, her voice sharper now. We had a plan, but things got out of control. Thomas shook his head, his frustration boiling over. You don't get to say that, he said. You don't get to act like this was some kind of accident. The room felt smaller now. the tension suffocating. Haley reached out, as if trying to calm him, but Thomas stepped back. Don't. He warned, just don't. His mind was made up. There was no fixing this. You left me no choice. Thomas said, his voice quieter now, but far more dangerous. Thomas, wait. But Haley pleaded, panic creeping into her tone. We can fix this, we can figure something out. But Thomas was already reaching for his phone. No, he said firmly. You should have thought about that before you decided to lie to me. Lynette's eyes widened as realization hit. What are you doing? She asked, though she already knew the answer. The impact of this discovery is honestly catastrophic. For everyone involved, we aren't just talking about a business deal gone sour. We are talking about the total destruction of a foundation. By forging signatures and manipulating financial records, Haley and Lynette moved this from a personal betrayal into the realm of criminal activity. Thomas is now facing the consequence of having his reputation dragged through the mud because his name is on those fraudulent papers. The legal fallout here could take years to resolve, and even if he wins in court, the emotional toll of having his trust shattered by his closest partners is a consequence that money simply cannot fix. If you ask me, there is absolutely no excuse for what they did. The moment you start forging someone's signature, you aren't protecting them. You are owning them and exploiting their trust. It makes me so angry to see someone like Thomas, who clearly put his heart and soul into building this, be treated like a puppet by the people he cared about most. I truly believe that once someone shows you who they are through a betrayal discalculated, you have to believe them the first time. He needs to call the authorities immediately, clear his name, and leave this stew in the rearview mirror. The story is a harsh reminder that sometimes the biggest threats aren't the ones we see coming from the outside, but the ones hiding right in our own inner circles. I want to hear from you guys. Do you think Thomas is being too harsh, or is he handling this exactly how he should? Is there ever a situation where protecting someone justifies lying and forging their name? Or is that just a load of nonsense? Drop a comment below and let's discuss because I'm genuinely curious where you stand on this. If you found this breakdown intense, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more deep dives into these stories of power and betrayal. Catch you in the next one.